What's up, guys? It's Eli and welcome back to the channel for another video. As you can see, I'm sitting on a new desk, but that is actually not the point. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to prep your session for mixing in Pro Tools. So I recently dropped a silent mix video, and in that video, there's a couple things that I didn't get to go over, and I'd like to go over them in this video. One being that it was a silent mix, I wasn't doing a lot of talking, and also at the point where I started that video, there's a lot of things that I had already done, so I didn't really want to go back and redo those things just for the sake of the video, especially that it was a silent mix video. And I figured that I would always make a video dedicated to those things specifically before you actually start mixing. So no harm, no foul. If you have not seen that video, make sure to go check it out after you watch this one. It makes a little bit more sense to watch this video first. So I'm going to link it at the end of this video. So make sure to check it out if you haven't seen it already. Enough talking on my part. Let's get started and let's set up this mix session. So I already started setting up this session, and I'm going to continue it once we get back up to this point, but there's a lot I already did that you guys didn't get to see. So right now I'm going to go back all the way to the beginning and make sure we do those things so you can see exactly how I do them. And if that works for you, maybe you can start incorporating those things into your mixing sessions as well. All right, so the first thing we need to do is to create a new session. We're going to start from scratch and we're going to build everything back up till this point, and then we're going to continue from there. All right, to create a new session, you can either go up to File and Create New, or you can just do Command N, and that brings up this dialog box. Either way, you're gonna end up right here. You can start a session from scratch, or you can start a session from a template. All right, so for this session, we're gonna start from scratch, no templates. The first thing we need to do is to name our session. All right, so let's do that right now. That is a very long name, but hey, that's what we're gonna do. All right, and the next thing before you hit create, you want to make sure you know where Pro Tools is going to save your session. You can either prompt for location, where every time you start a session before you hit create, Pro Tools is going to ask you where do you want to save your session. Or in this case, since I always save my sessions to the same spot, my Pro Tools already have that memorized. So what I did is choose the location, right? I'm using an external NVMe SSD drive, right? So I named it mini drive, right? That's where I'm saving all my sessions, and I'm choosing Pro Tools, and this is where all my sessions are going to be saved to. Once you get that done, you could just click open, right? And then create, and that's going to create your new session. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now we have a new session going, and next thing is to import our audio. Really, you can just drag and drop the audio to Pro Tools, but I don't like that way, so I'm not going to do that. So let's do it the right way, okay? So what you're going to do, you're going to go up to File, and then you're going to do Import Audio. And from there, you're gonna locate where your audio resides and bring it into Pro Tools. Right, so the beat that we're working on is called The Test, I believe. So I'm going to find that, and we're gonna find Bounce Audio. Right, so we have everything that we need here. Gonna click on the first one, hold down Shift, click on the last, and I want to copy everything over to this new session. Okay, so copy everything over. The reason why I want to do that is just in case if I ever move the Logic session over to a different hard drive, I don't want to have issues opening up this session because the files are no longer where they were, right? So I want Pro Tools session to live separate from the Logic session, not sharing any file. I'm going to copy everything over. You want to copy everything over, and from there, you're going to click open. Pro Tools is going to do its thing, and it's copying all the files over to the new Pro Tools session, so you don't have to worry about moving your Logic session and missing files. And then what you want to do, you can choose to do clips and then just import the files that you want, or you can just do everything to a new track. That's what I like to do. That's what I'm going to do. Now, in the case that you are working from a template, then you want to create a clip list, and then you drag everything to where you want them to go, right? So, but in this case, since we started from scratch, I'm just going to do new tracks. And yes, I want everything to start at the start of my session. You can also choose a specific location, but I like to have everything start at the start of my session, so we're going to do that. This little message right here is just basically telling you to timestamp everything into Pro Tools so Pro Tools can recognize everything and work smoothly, right? So we're going to do that for every track. Let's do that. It may take a few seconds. All right, so we just did that, and now we got our session in Pro Tools. And as you can see, things are not exactly lining up, with Pro Tools. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and organize the session so we know what's what and where they're at, and be able to find things a little bit easily. So I like to have my drums all the way to the left, or in the timeline view all the way at the top, and then followed by the other instruments. Let's go ahead and do that right now. All right, so I believe that I have everything in the order that I like to have them in my session. So the next thing to do from here is to basically start grouping things up and color coding and routing. I'm gonna do my routing first, and then we're gonna do color coding, and then we're gonna move forward. All right, so what I'm gonna do is select all my drums. All right, so I just clicked on the first one and then hold down shift and clicked on the last one. And from here, we're gonna start doing our routing. Now, there's a few different ways you can do routing, right? You can go on the top where it says track, click on new, and then it opens up this dialog box, and then you can choose what type of track you want and also the imaging for that track, right? In this case, I would have choose to have a stereo track, and I want it to be an aux track, of course, and name it drums, right? But I'm gonna show you an easier way you can do that. Now that I have all my drums selected, I'm gonna go to the far right drum instrument, and I'm going to hold down Option Shift, and I'm going to click on the output, right? It says out 1 and 2. I'm going to click on that, and I'm just going to say new track. That already skips a few steps for me. It already made it stereo, and it already chose an aux return track, and all I got to do now is just name it, right? So I'm just going to name it drums, and that's it. And I can just hit down enter, or I can click on create. Either way, it just does that for you. And as you can see, it automatically puts it on the right of all my drum group, right? Now, you can move it around and have it placed wherever you'd like to have it go, depending on how you like to see your session, right? So next we're gonna do is the same thing for guitar and keys. So I'm just gonna select those tracks and do the same thing. Okay, so now I've done all the groups. Now I need to do my master bus. To do my master bus, what I do is basically select all of my buses, just like I did for the individual instruments, and just basically do the same thing. Okay, so now I've basically created all my buses. All my session is pretty much routed. What we're gonna do now is color code everything to help navigate the session a little bit easier, right? I like to have my drums red. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select all my drum instruments, double click here, bring this dialog box in, and I'm going to select red for my drums. And what I'm gonna do for the bus, I'm gonna give it a different shade of red, or in this case, like a pinkish looking red. All right, so this is my session. Now I'm ready to start mixing. All right, so there's a couple things that I wanna do here before I jump over to the session that I actually already have saved, so we can get started on this mix. So the first thing you're gonna notice is that if I were to play my session right now, it's not going to be in sync with the tempo. We need to tempo lock it to the beat, right? Let's listen to a few seconds of the beat and see what the tempo sounds like. Right? Not even in the same world. What we need to do is we need to find a tempo. Easily, I can literally just drag my tempo down until it looks like my beat is on tempo, but that's not going to work every time. If I were to create a little loop right now with what I just did, I'm pretty sure it's going to be on tempo, but that's not always going to work. So you need to know how to find tempo for your session. Let's test out that theory real quick. So we're going to create a loop real quick. I'll make sure it's starting in the right spot and end on the right spot. And if I play it, it should be perfectly in tempo. Now, the reason why that worked is that I already knew what tempo the beat was on, so I knew what to go to. But also, I can easily see when the beat locked in with the tempo. So that is one way to find the tempo in Pro Tools. The second way you can find the tempo in Pro Tools is it requires a little bit more work, but I think it's a little bit more accurate, especially if you don't know the tempo of the song, right? So yeah, I think it's worth it. It's at least you should know how to do it. All right. So the other way that we're gonna find the tempo is by basically playing the beat and create a loop as the beat is playing. You can do 4 bars, 8 bars, whatever you want, but a 2-bar loop will work just fine. And as the beat is playing, we're gonna create that loop, and then afterwards we're gonna go back in and we're gonna fine tune the loop to make sure that it is a perfect loop. And from there, we're gonna tell Pro Tools this is just how many bars is in that loop, and from there, Pro Tools is gonna tell you what the tempo is for that section, and then after that you can go back and write the tempo to the session tempo, in which will basically lock your beat into the same tempo as Pro Tools. All right, so before I start playing the beat and create the loop, the way it works is basically you're gonna play the beat, hopefully at a part where there's drums going on, so you can easily detect what the balance for the beat is, and from there creating your loop is going to be a lot easier, right? So how we're gonna do that is by essentially play the beat, down arrow, count the amount of measures that you want, and at the end of that count, you're gonna hit up arrow. That's going to create the loop, and from there, you're gonna hit on Command I, bring up the dialog box, and you tell Pro Tools how many bars is on that loop. All right, so let's do it real quick. All right, so now I have my loop created. It's a 2-bar loop, and it's not perfect. What we're gonna do is we're gonna zoom in, and we're going to fine tune that loop. All right, so what you're looking for essentially is the 0 crossing point. With the 0 crossing point of every track, you'll be able to just tell Pro Tools like, hey, this is where this loop starts, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and move it over. And for this, you might, I forgot to mention, for this, you need to have slip mode on. Grid mode is going to be a little tricky to work with, so you want to have slip mode on, so it's going to work a lot easier for you, right? So I'm going to fine tune this right into the 0 crossing point of I'm following the 808 in this case, by the way. That, I believe, is the most on-beat thing on my session that I did. So yeah, I'm looking for the 0 crossing point. I'm gonna enlarge it a little bit so you can see a little bit better. Basically, I believe we are good right where we are right now, and then we're gonna basically go on the other side and do the same thing. Right, so we're gonna find where our loop ends and do the same thing on that side. All right, before I do anything, I'm just gonna play it and see what the loop sounds like. If it's a perfect loop, then we're good to go. If not, then we just do some fine adjustment until we get a perfect loop. All right. All right, let's turn off the metronome so it could be a little bit easier to hear. All right, so I'm not hearing any clicks and pops when the loop happens. So I think this is a pretty good loop. So what I'm gonna tell Pro Tools right now is that there's only 2 bars in that loop, right? That way Pro Tools is gonna give me a rough estimate of what the tempo is, and then I can just either round it up or round it down, whatever I need to do. To tell Pro Tools how many bars is in that loop, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to hit Command I, and it brings up this box. And we can see right now the location is on the 3rd beat of the 8th bar. And I know this is the 9th bar. So I'm going to tell Pro Tools this is 9. I'm going to tell Pro Tools basically the end of that loop is the 11th bar, right? So I got 9, 1, and then I got 11, 1. So perfect. And I'm just going to say, okay. And Pro Tools told me this is the tempo for this. If you're looking right here, it says the tempo for this is 128.0023. So we were extremely close to what the initial tempo of the beat is, which is a good place to start. Now that I basically know my tempo is around 128, what I basically did, I just undid everything. That's easier for me. I just undid everything and write in the tempo for the whole session. All right, so now everything should be pretty much locked in to the tempo, and if I play it, it should sound pretty good. All right, so now we're basically ready to start mixing, right? We got our tempo locked in, but before we accept that this is the tempo, we need to test it out. And how do we do that? Well, what I like to do, I like to go at the end of the session and I create a loop there. And if that loop is still a perfect loop, then I know my tempo is correct. All right, so what we want to do, we want to make sure that we actually have a good loop going on, right? So we want to make sure that we're starting at the right spot and ending on the right spot. And I need it to loop perfectly. So let's see what that sounds like. All right, that loop sounded good to me. So we're ready to move on. All right, so since this is basically a duplicate session, I'm going to jump back over to where I already started it, and we're going to continue from there. All right, let's go. We are getting pretty close to the end of this video, but first, if you're finding any type of value in this video, make sure to drop a like and comment down below to show support to the channel. And if you're new, don't forget to hit on the subscribe button and turn on the notification for more videos like this. And if you'd like to help support the channel, here's a few ways that you can do that. In the description down below, I am going to have my Amazon affiliate link. Make sure to use that link when you need to purchase anything on Amazon. It is not going to cost you anything extra, but we're going to get a little kick off of that and we can reinvest that back into the channel. But ultimately, here's the best way that you can help support the channel. Recently, I started releasing my beats for streaming. Adding us to your playlist will help to grow our monthly listeners, and that is ultimately the best way you can help support the channel. So links are going to be down in the description. Make sure to add us to your playlist. Whatever platform that you're listening to music on, we're going to be available on there. Spotify, Amazon Music, Tidal, Apple Music, YouTube, you name it, we're going to be available on all those platforms. Make sure to add us to your playlist to help grow our monthly listeners. All right, let's get right back into this video. All right, back to the original session. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create the master bus and I'm going to create the group so we can have our VCAs help control certain aspects of the mix to make it a little bit easier for us. All right, so to create a master bus, what I'm going to do is Command-Shift-N. Make sure I select the master fader and I'm going to change this to stereo, and the name is already master, so that's good there. Now I've created the master bus. Next, I'm going to create some VCA buses, and then we're going to create some groups and link them together so we can help make the mix a little bit easier. Okay, so I just finished renaming all the VCA tracks. Now I need to actually link them to some tracks, right? How I do that is by creating some groups that houses all those tracks, and then the VCA input is gonna be those groups. The same way I routed the audio to a bus, that's essentially the same thing I'm gonna do, except we're gonna do a different command at the end. You wanna make sure that you're not including the bus, you're just using the instruments themselves, right? So I selected all of my drums, and I'm gonna do Command G. I only needed to be able to solo and mute groups at a time. That's the only thing I really want. So I'm just gonna change it from mix and edit to just mix. All right, and I'm going to say VCA that it belongs to is drums. All right, so now we create that. Bam. Now if I just solo my VCA, my drums VCA, all you need to hear, all you're gonna be hearing is just the drums. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing for all the other groups as well. And after that, we're pretty much done. So for the most part, like this, you're pretty much good to go and you can start your mix. The reason why I only do mix in my groups is because I only need mixing controls when it comes to mixing the groups at a time. But for editing, I want to be able to go in and individually do what I need to do for each specific tracks. So that's why I only select to have mix enabled for my groups, right? So certain things I can do together in my groups, but for the most part, I want to do things individually, right? Like if I want to focus on drums, I can just solo the drum group, and that's all I need to hear. Right, whatever group I need to hear that specific group. But I can still solo a specific instrument and just have that play. Or I could have the group. Right, if I go over here where I have a little bit more going on, I can have, let's say, the keys play and everything on the keys will play. Or I can have an individual instrument play. That's pretty much it. That is pretty much it for the video. Hope you guys learned something. If you did, make sure to drop a like and comment down below to show support to the channel. And if you're new, don't forget to hit on the subscribe button and turn on the notification for more videos like this. All right? Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.